Hello, DC Plus Talk members. This is the creator of DC and Marvel Plus Talk. Now, you can comment below in the channel, either not to give me the superior name that maybe I'm looking for, but anyway, this is the first DC Plus Retrospective review. It's on Batman, the animated series. This year is the 30th anniversary of the show. I thought it would be a great chance to start doing regular analysis and in-depth discussion on the various DC and Marvel movies or TV or in general characters from that universe in the show, in the channel, permanently in the future maybe. Now, finally, with the most iconic, beloved animated series of the superhero genre, this show helped a lot alongside with the Tim Burton Batman films to cement Batman's popularity in pop culture. Now, the show did an amazing job of balancing the dark tone, mature writing, and the thematic complexity compared to previous superhero cartoon shows I have seen in my youth, plus any superhero shows recently. Now, that's just all my opinion. But, in addition, it helps that this show is borrowing key components from the comics, but also with the Burton films, like the music from Daryl Elfman, the production design from the late great Anton Fuss, or Burton's regular Bob Welch. Also, at the same time, this show is just amazing, really. I think it really gave Batman the identity that I think most superheroes lack right now, or they're trying to connect to the audience, but that's always been tough. This show and the movies help Batman to know who he is as a character from the comics, this dark adventure. It also helps that this show has a great, best artistic presentation with a sense of film noir aesthetics, which I like. Not only that, the voice casting is great. Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill, Arlene Sorkin, and Diane Person, and the talented voice cast in the show did a terrific job bringing these DC-related characters. Some of them has become the definitive voice from characters for many people, like myself. Now, the score from Cheryl Walker is fantastic. It keeps the familiar sound from Dale Evans' score from the Burton films, but she also injected more energy and more noir and jazz feel to the score of the show, which is good. Now, the show also made great effort of modernizing Batman as a character, which is great. Now, for this podcast, I'm going to do is pretty much now discuss in depth on the show with my top favorite Batman the Animated Series episodes.
Okay, so now let's start with number 10. Of course, in my Batman Animated Series top 10 episode ranking, this one is House of the Garden. In Poison Ivy's third solo appearance in the show, roughly bachelors are being poisoned and robbed across Gotham City, but Batman's main subject appears to have turned a new leaf. Poison Ivy has been one of Batman's animated series' most reliable roles for entertaining episodes, and House of the Garden is her best and pretty much her tragic horror story, penned by Ivy's most fanboy enthusiast, Paul Dini. Dini's greatest strength in this episode and his writing with the character in this episode is in exploring the metaphors underneath the rogue's gimmicks, and he approaches Poison Ivy from a different angle than her previous female retail appearances in the show. Reformed and happily married with a house in the suburbs, her husband's of two sons, Paloma Isley has given up her villainous career, but it's not all happy and, I say it, sort of barren life. Finally, finding happiness through the traditional family mold. In House in the Garden, Dini adds a new dimension to Isley with her newfound desire to have a family. Because of her hyper immune system, she's unable to have children. So, she hatches a elaborate and disturbing plan to make a family on her own terms. Just like all Batman rehabilitation stories, Poison Ivy cannot escape her true nature. She sees the opportunity to take control of the criminal profile of Stephen Carkin, the person that let her out of Arkham Asylum, seducing him with her poison kiss, then keeping him in a tank while she uses his DNA to create plant duplicates, including her sons, that he doesn't have. This is my favorite Ivy episode. In the show, It gives you an interesting story about Ivy, who is trying to be a different person. The only way Ivy can support her life as a loving wife and mother is by poisoning and robbing men to gain money for her own desires and man-sizing experiments in the lab. This shows all Batgirls struggle to adapt a noble life. And to end this note, it's for me anyway, number 10 in my ranking, and one of my personal favorite Ivy episodes. Then, number 9, Santana. I love that all the DC superheroes to have its very first guest star on Batman the Animated Series. It's Santana, who is they chose. A obscure magic-based character, yes. She seems a bit odd to fit for Batman's more realistic street-level environment. But Paul Dini creates a connection to Bruce Wayne that gives her extra significance to the Batman mythos. Santana is one of my all-time favorite DC characters, number 6 in my ranking. It's probably because of this episode, it's number 9 in this list of loved episodes in the show. Dini's attention to the mutual life of his heroes keeps this episode from falling into typical Batman action episodes among the other ones, which is good, and that's why it's at number 9. At number 8, Harley Quinn. When Joker threatens the city with an atomic bomb, Batman enlists Harley Quinn's aid in helping track down the crown prince of crime, hijinks as they will ensure. Leave it to Paul Dini to spotlight one of everyone's favorite psychology turned psychopath, Harley Quinn. In her first solo story, taking its time from the English, more slapstick interpretation of the Italian's Camere dell'Ute, Harley Quinn is the first time we see what Harley can do on her own, untethered to Mr. J, aka the Joker or Poison Ivy. The traditional Harley Quinn places the clown and the Harley Quinn characters at forefront of the goofy romance plot. While the story might be considerably different, Dini's script keeps the slapstick analyst using his experience on Tiny Toons to turn in a hilarious episode with fill of visual gas. Also, Dini turns up the mad cat comedy in this episode to capitalize on the odd couple pairing of Batman and Harley and hijinks that Harley and Joker do in these episodes. And this, for a reason, is number 8. Number 7, Heart of Ice. It's arguably the central episode of Batman animated series. Heart of Ice did a tremendous job of reinventing Mr. Freeze for a whole new generation. Batman swirls down to the obsolete assessment, making everything both essentially recognizable and still fresh and new at the same time. But Heart of Ice, which comes from the core team, the BTAS, Paul Dini, the writer, Bruce Timm, the director, went to the extra mile to reinvent Mr. Freeze completely. With a handful of comic book appearances, and his more biggest claim of fame was playing by 3 different actors from the 60s and a West TV show. Heart of Ice gave him a tragic backstory, a terrific creeping news sign from Hellboy creator Mike Mignola, and unforgettable vocal performance from Michael Ossorin, who completely brings the character to life. All the featured Mr. Freeze stories in comics or on screen now takes the cues from this episode. Batman and the episodes create stories from the comic books, but Heart of Ice was the complete opposite of that. It was an original tale of a man who lost everything and wants revenge, but at the same time, it had heart, humanity, and very nice villain reform. At number 6, Deep Freeze. On paper, Deep Freeze should be awful. First off, it's a sequel to the best episode of Batman new series, Heart of Ice, written by, again, Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. And most disappointing by comparison, secondly, it's based on an urban legend about Walt Disney being frozen and that he's a villain and he wants to attempt to gain immortality. Now, this content sounds really awful and could have gone wrong, but the BST team pulled it off some maniacal way. Yet, magically, it's not awful. I should have more faith in Dini and Tim, because the Deep Freeze is one of the best episodes in the entire series. Stunning Pulp Fiction adventure that also contains possibly the most heartbreaking moment in the whole show, which is really saying something. One thing that makes Deep Freeze great is that it's the only episode which the supervillain, in this case Mr. Freeze, managed to stay with form. Actually, after watching every villain in the rehabilitation stories fail to go straight, the moment Freeze decides to sacrifice his own happiness in order to save the lives of others is extremely satisfying. Freeze's expressions often melts with sadness. Mike Anderson's acting here is another amazing one, capturing the voice of the man who uses his emotions to hide his inner torment, finally letting himself to be invulnerable. This is definitely for me. Anyway, outshine his heart of ice, and it is a great Mr. Free episode for me, and his entire appearance in the DCAU. Number 5. From Chance to Dream. Bruce Wayne wakes up in a world where his parents never die. He's engaged to Celine Kyle, and someone else is Batman. I like these episodes. I love these episodes like Princess to Dreams because I love the what if. What if the Waynes were never killed? Someone else becoming Batman? Could I unstable Bruce attach himself to a fantasy life and kill himself when the real world wasn't satisfied enough? What is this episode end with a shot of Bruce at the bottom of that bell tower instead of Batman walking away from his latest victory? Well, you need to see this episode. It's really good. Karen Corrin gives one of his best performances here, besides doing a triple duty as Bruce, Thomas Wayne, and evil Batman. Corrin gives such a joy in life to brief scenes where Bruce thinks that maybe, just maybe, he doesn't have to be a Cape Crusader. That Bruce sounds 10 years younger. Afron is right. It is good to see Bruce in a good humor, but his joy is also the moment the illusion of his perfect life shatters. That much more heartbreaking. The Mad Hatter trapping Bruce Wayne in a dream of his perfect world feels like the Lauren Bright and Michael Reeves' reinterpretation of one of my favorite best Superman stories ever, the Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons for the Man Who Has Everything, which is once again shows Batman that the series picks up its influence from everywhere, and this is why it's at my number 5 in the rankings. Number 4, Second Chance. Second Chance is a great Two-Face episode that shows the impact that losing his best friend has had on Bruce. How important it is for him to have Dick slash Robin as his size. Yes, sometimes the Joker might be occasionally the Batman rogue, but Two-Face is Bruce Wayne's personal and greatest enemy on the Batman in the series. By establishing the friendship between Bruce and Harvey Dent early in the series, the writers gave the exceedingly loyal Bruce a companion. Harvey was someone that kept him linked to the non-constant reality. The creation of Two-Face robbed him of that variable connection, turning Harvey into another reason for Bruce to don the cape and cowl and drift further from his humanity. That's really great. Second Chance sees the Bruce and Harvey relationship return to the forefront. Finally, Bruce sees the opportunity to revive his friendship when Harvey prepares for a surgery that will take away his evil other side. And this reason, this is my favorite Two-Face episode in the series, and this is why it's at number 4. Number 3, Appointment in Crime Alley. At 9 p.m. on the anniversary of Bruce Wayne's death of his parents, Will and Dead will blow up Crime Alley and kill everyone who lives there, unless Batman can discover and stop his plot in time. Now, this is one of my favorite parts about the animated series, is they do adapt comic stories and single graphic novels into their shows. The Appointment at Crime Alley is the first Batman animated series episodes to be based on a specific story. In this case, There is No Hope in Crime Alley by Dennis or by Denny O'Neil and Dick Triangle. Like the source material, this episode introduced Leslie Thomas, one of my favorite characters in the Batman mythos. The socialite that comforted Bruce the night his parents were killed, whom he visits Crime Alley every time the anniversary pops up, the place of his parents' death every year on this anniversary. This is one of the greatest episodes for me that really examines Bruce's humanity and has a mother sector of Leslie Thomas there to support him. And this is why it's at number 3. Number 2, Trial. Trial is one of the most iconic episodes in Batman in the series. Not only Batman is being trapped by the villains of his rogues gallery in Arkham Asylum, and he's going to have a pretty much guerrilla trial with a attorney who doesn't like Batman. This is one of the great reasons that it's one of the most popular episodes that everyone's ranking of Batman in the series. Huge cast, callbacks to the previous episodes, focus on the psychology and philosophy make this episode highlight of the series. It's a shame that, for me, the trial is DA Jen Van Dorn's final appearance of the show. She was introduced back in the Shadow of the Bat two-parter. That was where we introduced Batgirl there. Because she's a great foe to Batman, holding him to the same legal standard as everyone else. And interesting, she was voiced by Stephanie Samuels. She's the daughter of the Afrin of the show, which is insane. But anyway, Janet is an aggressive woman who is threatened by her dedication to legal justice, which is good. And she has no problem telling Batman that if he wants to support the law and order, he needs to take off his mask and put on a uniform. Bruce Timm and Paul Dini are marvelous when they do team up. They take advantage of the great cast of villains of the show and has pretty much developed a intense and funny episode in Batman Animated Series. And this is why it's at my number 2. And for finally, at my number 1, Beware of the Great Ghost. A series of bombings, copy of the plot of one of Bruce Wayne's favorite shows when he was a child. So Batman seeks the aid of the actor who played his childhood hero. A meta commentary ensues. Batman the Animated Series took elements from various sources and turned them into something definitive for the title character of Batman. And, in this case, Beware of the Great Ghost pays homage to those influences, from the fresher Superman shorts to the pole heroes like the Spirit and the Shadow. Throw in Anna West voicing the Simon Tent of the Great Ghost, and this episode goes in entirely different level of awesomeness for me. This is great. Seeing and teaming up with a costume hero that he really loves when he was a child, Batman takes him to the Batcave and shows him he has a fanboy closet, which is crazy for me to see a Batman who is literally a fanboy of this character, revealing how much of influence the Great Ghost has on his life. Trenton replies, which I really like this line, so it wasn't for all for nothing. That effect that these stories have for long after they've been told is what makes them special, and Trenton needs to be reminded of the gift he has given others before he can see the worth inside himself. This is truly great, and also is a great performance from Anna West. Having Anna West on Batman and the series is a glorious meeting of two worlds. Even better, is an episode smartly written and gorgeously animated at the same time. Much like Anna West, by fully accepting the mask that he used to wear, Simon Trenton can find new success in honoring these stories that influenced their series. The creators made timeless tribute to the classic crime heroes, crafting one of the show's best episodes in the process, and one of my personal number 1 in my rankings overall. Thank you everyone for joining this podcast of Batman the Animated Series DC Plus Retrospective Review. I hope you enjoyed this. Have a good night.